Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Dr. Cindy Banyai, candidate for Florida Congressional District 19. I'm a mom and small business owner, and I'm fighting for our water, our health, and our community. And I'm so happy to be joined here today for our virtual town hall meeting with Maureen Porras. Maureen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, Cindy. My name is Maureen Porras, and I am a Democratic candidate for state representative in District 105. I am an immigration attorney, and I manage a nonprofit here in South Florida. I have been serving my community for over 11 years, and now I am ready to serve District 105. So thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maureen. Everybody here for joining us today for this virtual town hall meeting on looking ahead. What is the future for our community? So we're hoping to engage in a conversation around what is next. What vision do we need to take Southwest Florida, South Florida, Florida, and the entire United States through this challenging time and onto a better world where everybody has a chance for a good quality life in this country. And so for those of us who are joining us here today live, we do encourage you to ask questions. So we have our campaign, my campaign coordinator, Eddie, is here, so he'll be watching and monitoring that for us. And so if you have a question, just go ahead and put it into the question box and we will add that in. Also, not only just questions, any comments, thoughts, please add that in and we'll bring that out to the conversation here today. For those of you who are watching us in the recorded version that we'll be putting out afterwards, please feel free to join in on the conversation on either mine or Maureen's social media pages. We'll add that information to you, give that to you at the end as well. You can visit the website. Maureen has a website. We're all over Facebook and Twitter, so join in the conversation, especially when we do post and share this video for you. So thank you so much for us here today. I'm going to hand it over to Maureen. So we're going to have this a bit of a conversation, and so we can really think and dive into issues that are happening here, the most current issues with our economy and our health here in South and Southwest Florida. And then I want us to think together about what we can do to make it better. So Maureen, just thinking about that, what are you seeing on the ground through your work, through your campaign as some of the biggest issues we have right now?
Yeah, so Cindy, I think that I would definitely want to start with the issue of voter disenfranchisement. And I want to bring up the fact that 2 days ago, a U.S. District Court judge voted that that the legislative amendment that the GOP tried to pass, making felons having to pay before they vote, is unconstitutional. So I wanted to start with that, and I think that we can all agree that it's a victory for us, and that Judge Hinkle from the U.S. District Court actually made this ruling on Sunday. So it's extremely it came at a very good opportune time, and potentially it's going to allow just about 1.5 million voters or returning citizens the right to vote. And so I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to seeing that, and having as many of these returning citizens register and vote in this elections, because it's going to be important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you led off with that. That was definitely one of the biggest pieces of news and I guess victories for rule of law that we've heard recently. One of the things that I found most interesting about that is that there was a problem even with the Secretary of State of understanding how much people owe. And that's unfathomable for most people. I'm not a lawyer. I know you're a lawyer, so please, tell us and shed that light on it for us. But how is it that they could even fathom holding people to account for legal fees when the state itself doesn't even know how those legal fees are calculated or what they could possibly even be?
Yeah, so it seems like that's presenting a challenge to them. In fact, during the trial, the judge ordered the state to try to come up with those numbers, right? And they couldn't. In fact, they didn't. I don't believe that they tried. So part of the ruling is that they will give the state 21 days to come up with the figures and the numbers, right? And if they don't, then they can't prevent a returning citizen from registering to vote. And if they do come up with a figure, if the returning citizen can prove that they are indigent and that they can't pay that fee, then they won't be prohibited from registering to vote. So it really does set out all these guidelines for the state to follow and to make sure that they're doing their due diligence in coming up with whatever figure and court costs and fees that these returning citizens owe. So that's actually great because one, I mean, it's giving the state an opportunity to come up with these numbers, and then, you know, if they don't, then returning citizens will be allowed to register to vote.
Yeah, so this gives me a really big opportunity to think forward, I think. So I think, of course, it's really important that people have their opportunity to vote and to participate in our democratic process and have their voice heard. That is absolutely their right. The citizens of the state of Florida have determined that they really want this and added it in as in Amendment 4. So this is something that we know that we need in terms of our rights and voting. I want to take this a step further in terms of visioning for the future. So I would envision a place in the state of Florida where we don't have people who are indigent, that are low income, that are straddled with these fees, that they have extra court costs. In fact, that they may not even have the opportunity to engage in the judicial system in a way that's equitable at all. I envision a place where everybody does have equal access to justice, and it's not contingent on your skin color or contingent on your economic situation. What do you think about something like that? How can we, you know, what would be a vision that you have moving forward in terms of that piece of, you know, our justice system?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, there is a lot that I think that we need to reform within our criminal justice system, also within our education system. But to start with, again, our criminal justice system right now disproportionately affects minorities and the impoverished, right? And so right now we have a good opportunity, at least in Broward County and Miami-Dade County, to make some reform. And, you know, what I would like to see is a system that really ends mass incarceration. Because again, the majority of people that are incarcerated are minorities compared to the percentage of residents that are in Florida. I think that during our last conversation, I mentioned that African Americans make up about 17% of Florida's population, but they make up a little bit more than 40% of those that are incarcerated. So it's, you know, there's a huge discrepancy. And so I would like to see some of that, well, not some of that, but all of that disappear. And in order for us to do that, I think we have to do a couple things to end that, right? So we have to focus on prioritizing pretrial diversion. And what does that mean? It means that anyone that enters the criminal justice system is allowed a chance to participate in a program that where if they complete certain parts of it and they meet certain conditions, then, you know, they're allowed to have their case either dismissed or you know, receive adjudication withheld, which means they won't have a conviction. And, you know, that's important because for a lot of people, that is really it's really, sometimes it's their first offense, you know, they made a mistake, they deserve the opportunity, the second opportunity to be reintegrated back into society. And so we want to make sure that we are prioritizing those types of programs to give people a proper second chance, right? Also, I think that we definitely need to end the cash bail system, because a lot of people can't pay to bail out. And what ends up happening is you have all these indigent people incarcerated, and they can't meet bail, right? So that's part of the problem, and that's why, you know, there's a lot of minorities that are incarcerated, they can't make bail, and a lot of the times these individuals are head of households, they're the main financial contributors, and so not only is that person suffering, but their family members are suffering. You know, they may have kids that depend on them. So I would definitely want to see the cash bail system end. Not only that, but you know, if you have enough financial resources, you're going to make bail, right? So it's clearly unfair. If you are put in jail for the same offense as someone that is financially well off and you can't make bail, they'll be out, but you won't. And that's where this disparity, you know, is really shown. So I would like to see the cash bail system end. You know, it was implemented to make sure that individuals showed up to court. But again, I don't think that, you know, there's a big correlation between the two.
Well, sure.
I would also like to see the end of direct filing for minors.
Right?
So currently in Florida, the prosecutors can file a case for a minor directly with the criminal court. And that's not something that every state practices, but we do here in Florida. And that's a major issue, because we're sending, you know, kids underage that have committed, you know, certain offenses straight to criminal court. And we all know that kids' brains and minds aren't as developed as adults. So, you know, if anything, I think maybe we should start using a judicial waiver process where there's a hearing held for that minor to see if, you know, they have the mental capacity to be tried in criminal court. But I don't think that prosecutors should have that sole discretion in being able to send minors to criminal court, right? So again, that's part of protecting our youth. I really do want to see the school to prison pipeline end. That's something that we definitely need to give our children, and they deserve that. So I would like to see also more programs that are dedicated to ending that as well. And then of course, you know, I want to make sure that we are protecting our immigrant community. We want to make sure that if an immigrant is a victim of a crime, that they can feel free to speak to a police officer or the state attorney's office to report that crime. And I mean, if we don't do that, we're doing a disservice to our community and to victims. So I definitely want to see that. I think that we should also end any and all cooperation between ICE and our local law enforcement. I know that over in Collier, you know, we have the 287G contracts. I want to see that done and disappeared. And, you know, moving forward, I think that it would make for a better community. And I think that if we work together as a community without, you know, the fear of having one of our own or an immigrant being picked up by ICE, that we can work better.
Yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts on that, Maureen. I see a couple questions coming in. One I know is specifically related to this conversation, and then there was a couple others. So we'll loop back to the ones on different topics.
Sure.
But there was one that Mary Beth had asked about, and that was about how this issue is related to our districts here in 105 and 109. And what I would say is that, you know, for me, I am looking at the comprehensive nature of how families and people are living and working in our community. That is actually, when I say our community, that's the blanket of all of these issues: equity issues, criminal justice issues, immigration issues, you know, housing issues, because that's really what makes or breaks a community, is all of these small components that lead to issues in somebody's life. So I think that it's important now, you know, in terms of it being a winnable issue versus a non-winnable issue. I mean, I have 16 pages of policies on my website, comprehensive across every area that I think is important for Florida Congressional District 19, as well as the United States overall. And I've personally also linked that plan up to the Sustainable Development Goals, that are the 17 goals that are the biggest issues in the world today. So, you know, is this for me personally something that I'm going to be campaigning on? No, probably not. I'm not a lawyer. You know, lawyers love to talk about this kind of stuff too. I love to talk about community, and I know that this is an important part of community, but I want to present a comprehensive plan to people and just demonstrate that I'm knowledgeable and passionate about all areas that are needed to make people's lives in our community better. So I think this is a very important conversation, and it's very timely given the amendment for a ruling. So, you know, Maureen, maybe if you want to speak briefly on how this is related to the landscape of 105, and then we can get back to those other questions that folks have.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, as far as the ruling goes, it's expected that the administration will be appealing. I think that my best advice right now for anyone that will be eligible or is deemed eligible right now is to go ahead and do this. And I'm actually actively looking for and waiting for the guidance from the state, right? Because you have to submit this request for an advisory opinion. And so to do that, they have to provide you with the link or the application, and then, you know, wait the 21-day period. So as soon as that's released, I think that a lot of people from District 105 will benefit from this. In fact, I have spoken to some individuals in the district that are concerned that they're waiting for that. They, you know, they want to exercise their right to vote. And so my advice to them is, currently it is permissible. It's permissible to request that advisory opinion. And as soon as the state releases this, even if the administration appeals, you should do it. You should request that advisory opinion. And if the time comes and you don't receive a total number of, or whatever it is that you owe, then you can go ahead and register to vote. You know, that's assuming that there won't be an intervening injunction, which, you know, could also happen. But as it stands right now, you know, I would advise people from District 105 to absolutely go for it.
And District 19 too. And Neil Vaz is one of the leaders of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, and he's based here in Fort Myers and has been a longtime homeless service advocate as well. And so I do think it's something that there's a lot of prominent people in this area who have been fighting for, and also that it does affect the lives of everyday citizens and their availability to vote. So I would take Maureen's advice and get that opinion and work towards getting your registration as soon as possible, even if that something else happens in the meantime. I think that's important for us here, particularly as people who are interested in getting people into the participatory process of government, of helping to support their voter registration. So great. So I'm going to have Eddie go ahead and tell us. He's been monitoring that chat. Eddie, can you help queue up a question for us for the next part of our discussion?
Yeah. So we have 2 more questions so far. And the next one I'm going to get to is, how do you plan to reach older voters who are not really present on social media, especially right now in the middle of the pandemic? It might be a little bit harder to do that, but if you can share some of your strategies.
Yeah. So Cindy, do you mind just repeating that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was about how we're reaching older voters or voters who are not necessarily on social media. And I'll talk a little bit about this and we'll hand it over to Maureen. So for me, you know, I've moved my entire campaign to a digital campaign. I am doing these virtual town hall meetings that we're sharing out through Facebook, social media, YouTube, also regular email communications. Also, we have opportunities to talk with people. I call hundreds of people in our district and across the country every single day. We have texting campaigns. We have postcard campaigns. We have, we're spinning up additional filmmaking and polling, as well as we have a new letter campaign coming out as well. So we're really working to connect with people where they are, where we can meet them. I also did things like joined the Blue Gator Initiative car parade yesterday through Bonita Springs and Estero, so that we could, you know, encourage people to vote by mail. They could see, you know, some about my campaign in a safe and socially distanced kind of way. So that's some of the ways that we're looking at it. So Maureen, what is your campaign doing?
Yeah, so we are also reaching out to voters by calling them. I'm actually doing wellness calls to everyone that's registered to vote. And, you know, we're doing a lot of campaign calls. We are also, the Democratic Party is actually also working on sending postages to voters, reminding them to, you know, either renew their vote by mail registration or to register by mail. You know, we're also sending out messages. I know that some of these people are not on social media, but we are referring them back to either the correct supervisor of elections website where they can just register to vote, or to my campaign website where, you know, and have the direct link available for them. So it's a good effort. I think that it's being made not just by the candidates, but also by the party. And the party has a lot, yeah, they have a lot of different groups as well that are doing this. So I mean, we're doing the best that we can, and I think that whatever we're doing, we're reaching a lot of people, and hopefully, you know, we get to do that and reach just about everyone. Hopefully everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely throwing out some props to the people. There's so many of those coalitions. The Blue Wave Coalition is one of them, but there's lots of groups, grassroots groups, Democratic clubs and caucuses, other, you know, engaged citizens. The Blue Gators is another one too, that are really working to make sure people are registered to vote and that they know about the election times, the vote by mail, and that's going to become increasing important for us, I think. And I'll just throw just like one little tiny tidbit in. As some of you know, I was working to get a statewide coalition. I spun up a statewide coalition of candidates. There was 51 candidates, and we were working to advocate for the ballot requirements to be reduced during the coronavirus, all that stuff. So there is additional concern from that on the election component and the signatures and the vote by mail. And so I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that even though that there was that one component that we still, you know, we had to pony up, those of us in congressional campaigns, or not get on the ballot, but we have not stopped pursuing legal avenues around that, and it ties into ensuring also that we have adequate protections in terms of signatures for voting when it comes to our vote by mail. So just stay tuned on that. We're working behind the scenes on that, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that did not fall by the wayside, that in addition to campaigning, with me, you also have somebody who is working actively to make sure that people are continuously able to exercise those democratic rights, get on the ballot and let voters decide, but that I'm using my skills as a collaboration builder, and, using political will and political strategy to get some of these things accomplished, even in real time during the campaign. So I just want to throw that little bit out there on that. Eddie, do we have another question ready?
Yes, we do. So Stephen would like to know if you are elected, how will you work together to bring knowledge and incentives to manufacturing, warehouse, and retail essential supplies, funded by local people and reinvesting local profits? Thinking local businesses with local shareholders growing food, manufacturing N95 masks, and making sure they're sold by and accessible to people in Fort Myers, for example.
Wow, that sounds, whoever made that question sounds very knowledgeable about this area. So let me just repeat back in a way so that Maureen and I can kind of bat this back and forth. So it sounds like this person's really concerned with making sure that we have a strong local economy that has the ability to produce things that people in our community need, as well as provide sustainable livelihoods for people. And it was making some particular points about manufacturing. So I'll start, because I will say I have a background in workforce development here in the region, as well as community development. So I am very, I'm very passionate about this. And I am somebody who always is a proponent of making sure that when we invest public dollars, they have maximum public good benefit. Okay, that's my evaluator component of me. But what that means in terms of economic development is that we want to make the biggest bang for our buck. Okay, and for me, all indicators point towards biggest bang for the buck is investment in small business, and not small business like 500 and less, but that can be a reasonable place, but micro businesses with full-time employees of 20 or less. Actually, those types of businesses make up 91% of the businesses in Southwest Florida. So most of our businesses are these types of micro businesses, and they can benefit so much by having even small amounts of investment that really aren't there. There's very little in terms of startup dollars for small businesses, and you have to have a significant amount of financial backing in order to get some of the other loans that really kind of places those micro businesses out. So I would like to see an investment in that. The other reason that investment in those small businesses makes sense, not only because of the significant return on investment, but that those dollars stay locally as well. So when you invest those dollars, they stay here. You invest in a corporation with external headquarters or investors that are offshore, those dollars immediately leave the community. Now, I know that a lot of people are hurting because of the Hertz bankruptcy. We're losing and shedding hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in the coming months because of the bankruptcy in Hertz. And I think that they are a good company, and this is not to say that there's anything wrong with them in particular. However, I have been a longtime critic of using public dollars to lure in corporate headquarters and relocations, especially to the Southwest Florida area. Our economy, our workforce is simply not able to handle that. And what I mean is that even though dangling jobs and economic infusion into an area is really attractive, we have a donut economy. And what that means is we have a lot of CEO retirees, high-level executive professionals, and a lot of people who are retail and lower end of the professional spectrum, right? We are missing those mid-level professionals. We are missing them because we do not have housing affordability, and we do not have education that is sound, and you cannot get people who are starting their family and bringing a trailing spouse with them to move to an area, to move into a house that they cannot afford, and a place where there's not an adequate job for their likely equally professionally capable spouse. And this has been a perennial problem in Southwest Florida, and it's because we invest in this disproportionate way. We don't invest in small businesses and help them grow organically and expand. We look for the moonshot Hertz relocations, or we invest in things that are ultimately going to lead into, low-paying jobs, your retail, your hospitality, and things like that. So, for me, when I look at it and think about it like that, I would love to see things like small-scale manufacturing. I would like to see, cottage industry development, but it has to be started and incubated from small businesses that are already here or already want to be here with local talent, local resources, and we invest and grow them. Maureen, what do you think about this in terms of local workforce and sustainability?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. And just a couple of things. I think that absolutely our small businesses are really the backbone of our economy. And I think that we need to use exemptions, tax exemptions, rebates, subsidies, to spur economical development for small businesses, right? And I mean, for so long, we've been doing this for the larger businesses, the conglomerates, and I think that it's time to do this for the small businesses because they're the ones that really need the help. They're the ones that are spurring the local economy. And so I think that would, those would be good tools to do that. Now, I would also encourage assigning contracts, state contracts, and using public funds and assigning those to, contractors that will hire local workforce and also workforce that are part of unions, that are giving livable wages, that are setting standards for workers that are good standards, of course. And I think that, that's how we can help. We can use all these different rebates and exemptions and subsidies and award them to businesses that are really providing work for Florida Floridians, people that are here in Florida, and also to businesses that are Florida grown and Florida established. So I really think we need to shift our focus to that. I will also say that I will also support, removing preemption from the state so that local governments and, they can decide, living wages, they can decide work-related, make work-related decisions based on their locality because, they're really the only ones that can determine what that locality needs. Like we don't need other counties, that have less population or that have a different, standard of living and cost of living dictating what's, what a business or a locality here in South Florida needs. And so I'm also for removing those preemptions from the state government. And I think that, by doing all these different things, we can really help out small businesses and we can really spur the local economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already know from data and research that the living wage varies significantly, even across the state of Florida, from county to county, across the country, because of these components of housing and transportation costs. And we need to be able to make decisions on that. So my vision for this is not only investment in small businesses and making sure that every family has the ability to have a living wage, to work and be honored and valued as an employee in a way that they do not have to continue to rely on government subsidies or, have to live in substandard housing. My vision for this is moving forward is that everybody has the availability to meet all of their needs, and that we also have special supports for people who do want to have small business growth, innovation, and cultivate local resource and talents to grow really strong communities. Because for me, like I said, when I think about it, what really makes everything work And what we're missing so desperately right now is the trust between people that is developed with strong neighborhoods and communities. And it has a lot to do with how we orient both the design of our communities, the design of our streets, the design and investment in our economics as well. And the more that we invest in companies that take those dollars and resources outside of the community, the less investment we have inside the community. And that investment in both a time and financial component is what erodes further trust in sense of community and people. So that's me. And again, that's my community development background. I'm so passionate about this. I've worked with people around the world, communities, countries around the world around this and what it means to be invested in your community in a significant way. And, I think this also has broader, exponential components around things like we see that are so negative, our divisiveness, hate groups and hate crimes rising up and racism and bias, all of that gets diminished the more we connect with one another. And there are systemic components that we can do as legal elected officials that can make the community building between people easier. So what's your vision, Maureen, when it comes to moving us forward in terms of our workforce and economy?
So I definitely think that we need to create a stronger workforce. And to do that, we have to provide workers with basic work rights. Honestly, I think that's the first step. Well, actually, no, the first step would be to increase the minimum wage. Honestly, we need to have a minimum livable wage to begin with. And, we can do that. And at the same time, we can also provide workers with basic protections. And I think that, right now, we have a legislator that almost passed a union busting bill. And we really need leadership that will focus on workers, that will understand their value, their needs, and bring that to the table, And like I said, I think that unions are a good way to do that. I fully support unions. And I also think that perhaps the government can facilitate some of these things between unions and employers, and so that we're encouraging not just employees to have good working conditions and benefits and a livable wage, but also we encourage employers to adopt that. So I think that is one of the primary things that I would like to see accomplished. I want to expand workers' rights and benefits, and especially after this pandemic, right? Because a lot of these workers were on the front lines. They were essential, and they deserve better. They really do. They deserve better. And I think that we need to take that into consideration, that this can happen again. And I want to see hazard pay for these individuals that have been working throughout this pandemic, that have been risking their lives and their families' health as well, to continue producing for the economy and for the community. So that's really what I would like to see.
And that's a great point around unions ensuring that workers are protected during this time, and always. And we've seen a history of this union busting activity, like you were saying, and it really needs to stop because it allows big corporations to take a disproportionate role in our economy and in our negotiations in our life, and it leads to lower quality of life for people. And so I'm a big proponent of that as well, and I'm glad you brought it up. So let's get to Eddie to get another question, and we'll continue this conversation. So Eddie, what other questions do we have from the audience here?
So you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you hit all the questions so far, although Mary Beth also made the comment. She sent in the voter protection hotline, 833-VOTE-FLA. I will get that on our website later. Maureen,
Thank you.
I also have a picture of it, so I can send it to you afterwards too. But that is a great resource for everybody to have, and I'll make sure that everybody has access to that online later.
Fantastic. All right, thanks, Eddie. So everybody, if there's more questions, put them in. Eddie will monitor. But I think that, so we've talked, now we've talked about criminal justice reform. We've talked about the economy. Let's talk a little bit more with our time left here on, again, visioning, right? What other vision haven't we yet talked about, Maureen, that you're looking at post COVID-19? What, probably something that we've already had in our hearts and our minds that we know would make our world and our community a better place. But what, as you're looking out, what would be something that you would work towards in your position if you were elected to 105? What vision would you be working for that we haven't touched on yet?
So I definitely, looking ahead, I want to see opportunity, right? And I want to see opportunity in education. And I think that investing in our public education system will be one of the best investments that we can make. And I would like to see every child get an opportunity to learn in a, well, first in a safe environment, free of violence and fear of violence. And I would like to see every child get an opportunity to educate themselves and to also excel in life, regardless of their race, their gender, and their socioeconomic status. So I am a huge supporter of public schools. I graduated from public schools here in South Florida. I went to public school all through high school, and I went to Florida National University, a public college. And I can tell you that, public schools are good quality, and we need to keep investing and improving them. And we need to stop using public funds to fund charter schools. We need to bring that money back, not just into our public school systems, but to also raise the salary for staff, for teachers, for custodians, for cafeteria workers, for everyone that plays a role in shaping the school system, which, I think children deserve that. And I think that a lot of them can really use the opportunity, especially in lower income areas. I think that we need to improve education. We shouldn't be, trying to compete with charter schools or private schools. We need to be on the highest level that we can, and we need to invest in our public education. And that's really one of the best ways to create opportunities for people, and to also not just create the opportunities for them, but also for them to come back in and invest in our economy, and also resolve all these different issues that we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I so appreciate that too. As a mom of 2 public school children here in Southwest Florida, I agree that we absolutely need to make sure that those schools are properly funded, that we work towards making sure that we're closing achievement gaps. Again, I'm very much in that same boat, that all children should have equal opportunities to move forward in their life through public education. And I've spent a lot of time researching and bringing those issues to light in our community. So I want to pivot to another vision of mine, because Maureen and I are very much aligned on this, just hearing her talk about that. And at the federal level, I would be looking to make sure that we do have federal funding. I would also be looking at trying to walk back some of the requirements around testing, and making sure that students are not over tested, and that we have a good working relationship between our national education system and our state and local education systems. I think that we just need to improve those relationships and make sure that the funds are working, so that, again, with the lens of equity for all students moving forward. So another vision that I have that I don't get an opportunity to talk enough about, that I think is so relevant right now, and that is family-friendly policies. So going a little bit back to workforce, but thinking about the role that women play and the disproportionate effect that this pandemic and the economic fallout has had on women, and thinking about how we can work through that and accommodate that. So we know that family-friendly policies include things like remote work and flexible work and job sharing and childcare and maternity leave and healthcare, by the way, falls into that. Although I'm not specifically a proponent of employer and healthcare 100% of the time, because I am definitely a supporter of a Medicare for all type system with streamlined costs. But it would be nice to be able to have additional benefits and supports when it comes to health, particularly taking care of sick children. And I think that what we've seen through this, the pandemic and the closing of the physical school buildings, is that it's a lot. It's possible in a lot of fields to move work remotely, and that makes life a lot easier for women. And it, especially as being the default parent more often than not, it keeps them engaged in the economy. And I'm going to throw even a macroeconomic lens on that. This is good for our macroeconomics, because the more we can keep women engaged in the workforce, the more productive we are overall. If we do not have gap years in income for women, if we do not have, skill gaps that are lost when women take time off to take care of children or sick family members, they are able to continue to grow in their career and continue to contribute to the economy overall. So I like to throw that in, because a lot of folks, especially people who are critics of this kind of thing, they like to say, hey, oh, it sounds great to give women blah, 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 but economy or whatever. And I go, hey, but listen, this is actually for us all, because if you look historically around the world at places that have failed to adequately integrate women into their economy drops overall. I mean, think about it just in terms of just straight numbers. We're 51% of the economy. And if a significant portion of us are hampered from reaching our highest goals and productivity, then the whole thing doesn't work. We see it in Japan. And guess what, folks, for everybody who wants to be the China naysayers, China's the next one who's going to be affected by this because of their 421 families. Because all those women who are married to those men, they got to take care of their parents, and they're not going to be able to work. And that's going to have a negative impact on their economy overall. And when you set up systems like that, even if it's unintentional, you leave women out of the system and make it impossible for them to be integrated back into a workforce, into a job where they feel valued and they can use their talents and resources to move themselves forward as well, then we all suffer. The family suffers, the community suffers, and our macroeconomic situation suffers. I like to make that connection because it touches us all in that way, and it helps to put all those naysayers aside. So my vision would be a society an American society where we adequately respect the contributions of women into the economy, and we make accommodations to make sure that they can continue to fill that valuable role in our economy, as well as the valuable role to their families. Maureen, what do you think about that piece before we move on to another vision? Did you get your mic back? I can't hear you yet. Let me look at you.
Okay, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. But yeah, Cindy, I agree. I mean, you really can't leave out, the majority of people out of the economy and out of integrating into the workforce. And, it's true. I think women have a double burden when it comes to working. They have their work responsibilities and they have their home responsibilities. And honestly, I think that women are the best at multitasking. Just look at you. You're one of the best multitaskers that I've ever known. So, I mean, we definitely need to recognize that, and we need to help. We need to help women. We need to do this by making sure that there's affordable daycare, that there is paid parental leave, there's adequate working conditions, and that, businesses can allow women to take time off if they need to, because, I think women are one of the first ones to respond to family emergencies. And, I've worked at at places where maybe there isn't enough coverage for someone to leave during the day because you have to remain at work to fulfill your work duties, right? And sometimes you even feel bad about leaving and attending to whatever emergency that you have. And we definitely need to change that. And again, I think that everything is really connected, that if we start with investing in our small businesses so that they can hire enough staff so that, women or men, of course, if they need to take family leave or if they need to leave for the day, that there's enough coverage where the business owner doesn't feel like, it's a burden for them to have this employee leave. And again, this happens, I think, a lot more to women. And so we have to be able to recognize that, and we have to be able to come up with ways to help bridge that gap, and not just in terms of that, but also the wage gap. I mean, that is actually big, right? That's something that we should be looking at, and we should really be taking responsibility for. I mean, as the state needs to start doing that. And of course, you're running for a congressional seat. So I think that definitely the federal government needs to also be involved in this and making sure that the wage gap, is cut to nothing. And we haven't been doing that. And, we haven't even put that women are equal. We haven't ratified the ERA. Right. And so, I think that's also one of my priorities that I'll have as the legislator in Florida. I want to make sure that we ratify the ERA and that Florida is on board with this. There's no reason why we shouldn't. It's already in our state constitution. It should definitely be in our federal constitution.
Absolutely. Let's continue to work for the ERA, and I'm somebody who's definitely a proponent of that. I'm a member of the Democratic Women's Club of Lee, and been to the state convention where we've rallied in support of the ERA, and that's something I'll continue to do at the federal level in the 117th Congress as well. So Eddie, I didn't see any additional questions coming in.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. Go ahead and give that to us.
Stephen had a follow-up question to the manufacturing one. He said, what you both said about workers and businesses in Southwest Florida are really important. Could you speak more about our dependence on elsewhere for essentials like ending food deserts and having enough N95 masks to protect workers who must work with other people, as in restaurants as well as prisons and senior centers, to protect the workers as well as those who are served?
Great. Maureen, you want to jump in on that one first? Or you just...
Cindy, if you could repeat the question.
Oh yeah, so sorry. We have a little bit of funny feedback there, so hopefully you can hear it. But so the question is about the supply chain essentially in Southwest Florida and South Florida. How can we respond to making sure that people have enough of what they need locally, particularly around things like food deserts and PPE for particular businesses? And since you didn't get a chance to hear it the first time around, I'll let you roll around on it and I'll give a response, because I was thinking about this already in terms of food deserts. This is a piece of work that I've been involved with quite a bit around Southwest Florida. I know that this is an issue for us. We're very fortunate in Florida that we have a good agriculture base that has some diversity to it, right? So we do get a lot of fruits and vegetables coming towards us, but we still are very much reliant on a global food supply. And that's what makes things like food deserts so important to address, right? Because we can't rely on everything being locally grown and sourced. We do have to have the appropriate retailers to be able to distribute that. So there's research that has been done through Florida Gulf Coast University that helped to demonstrate where some of these food deserts are across the area. And it's good to know from a policy standpoint, because then we can make appropriate investments in making sure sure that there are, access to those goods to people in areas. And I know that there has been some, for instance, trying to get pointing out where the food deserts are and then helping to connect with business investors who want to invest in grocery stores that would serve those areas. I will reel it back a little bit on that too, just to say I am a proponent of what's called LOHAS in weird acronym speak, but it's local, organic, healthy, and safe. I would love to see us move towards that as a society and as a local community, but it's going to be more than just, a fiat kind of thing. We can't just say, okay, everybody grow your own food in your front yard kind of thing. But in places where this LOHAS concept has been successful, it really is like a movement and an initiative combined with loosening of local regulations and requirements around it. Like, for instance, if I did want to put a garden in my front yard in downtown Fort Myers, I don't think I'm within like historical city limit code, right? Although that would be kind of an interesting thing. But so for me, thinking about that, starting to focus on it, starting to talk about what it would mean to have a truly local, healthy, organic, and safe lifestyle, and then building the policy around it. But it takes a mentality shift too, right? Like I said, we do have a totally globalized supply chain in terms of our food right now, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that because I also want to see global economic development. I do think that integration globally is really important for global stability. So the more connections we have, economics and trade leads to increased diplomacy. It leads to increased peace. Okay, and I know that's like a lot of steps on the line, but this is true. This is a fundamental theory on which the European Union was based, by the way, right? Is that with economic integration comes stability. And it's frankly, in terms of political theories in the world, it's been proven to be pretty successful. We're dismantling it because of our own nationalistic and xenophobic ideas, but that doesn't disprove the fact that economically integrating is an important thing. So, but I think we can balance it again. So if we balance it by starting to think how we can think locally and source locally and support local business and support local agricultures, support local manufacturing, then we can have, a component of our supply chain be that global supply chain and yet not be, see significant gaps when we have problems like we see right now. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to a component where we'll be manufacturing things like N95 masks like in our backyard. I'm not even sure if that's necessarily a requirement, but I do like what I saw coming out of Lee County today, which is the distribution of funds that came from federal CARES dollars to local businesses to purchase those equipment to help their staff. That kind of thing I think is really important. And making sure that we are localizing any federal funds for distribution to help people protect themselves is going to be a really important thing moving forward. And it's a way that I want to govern. Just a last point on this is I want to govern by outcomes. Okay, so that means making policy and then making a budget and then letting it go down through the state and the local level to make the programs to implement them. And it's actually exactly how these CARES dollars are being distributed in Lee County. So I would have liked to see a little transparency around it, but ultimately a really good, strong approach to adaptive governance. That's Professor Banyai is done talking about that. Now let's have Maureen. Maureen,
you make great points, Cindy. And honestly, the only thing that I have to add to that you brought up is that, there's all these different levels of government. And so I think that working together is going to be, I think, the best way to approach these things. And so, the state government and the federal government and the local governments will have to find a way. First of all, they'll have to identify those needs, and we'll have to find a way to work together to address them. And again, I think using federal dollars when they're available, I think that would be a good use. And then of course, state dollars and local dollars. And I think that if we really if we really care about an issue and we come together, we can address it and we can mitigate it, and we can resolve it as much as we can. But we all need to work together. And I think that, both you and I, we are individuals that are open to discussion regardless of party affiliation. And I think that's going to be very important.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And ending on the bipartisan coalition note. So thank you so much. We're coming up to the hour. So what I'd like to do from here is just give Maureen a chance to, make a closing statement to us. Tell us, again, you can relate it to our theme here today of looking ahead, but tell us your closing statement about your campaign, what you want people to take away, and then, of course, how they can help you.
Yeah, so again, thanks, Cindy. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think that we hit a lot of the issues and the topics that I think we really needed to. Right now, I think that we really need a good, strong voice in Tallahassee and also in Congress. And I think that if we come together and unite under the issues and how we can resolve them, we can win. We can. And, I'm really running to bring a voice to those issues and to the people that are often ignored and neglected. And I've been serving my community for over 11 years, doing exactly that, just the same way that you have. And, I think more importantly than having a candidate tell you what or promise you or tell you exactly what they're going to do, is looking at their background and seeing what they have been doing. And so, what have they been doing with the community? How have they spent their time? How have they spent their career? And I think that for both of us, you can see our public service record, and that we care about the community, and that we're ready to fight for them, and that we are uniquely qualified and uniquely positioned to do this. And so, I invite everyone to join us. You can visit my website, go to maureenporras.vote. It's very easy. Look at what the priorities are, what the issues are, and there's always an open door for you and for everyone that wants to discuss issues and give me their opinions. And that's always going to be the case with me, right? And so, again, I urge everyone to just join us, and whether it's by volunteering, by sharing, promoting our campaigns, by donating, because you can't win. Well, you can, but you really need to spread the message through fundraising. And now that we're campaigning, virtually, I think it's going to be important to get those fundraising dollars in there, so we can take our message and just promote it everywhere. So thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope that we'll do this again. And thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Maureen. It was fantastic to hear from your experience. And yes, like you, I've worked 11 years in this community, working with nonprofits, working at the university for more than 6 years, helping to train the next generation of thinkers in community and government. And I'm raising kids here. I chose this place because it's beautiful and it's rich with history, and I think that they need new leadership. It's just been the absolute bane of my existence in my professional life here, taking reports and having them summarily ignored because there are political interests that would rather not. Yep. Just rather not. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of people being ignored. I'm tired of this strong network of people who have big financial backers just pretending like the people are nothing more than a resource for them to make more money. And they ignore us. We haven't had a town hall at the congressional level here in 2 years or more. We haven't had public meetings. We have a congressional representative with the lowest, one of the, the highest absentee rates, and I don't really see anybody on the other side stepping up and doing anything more. They're not promising that. They're promising all other shades of crazy, none of which are reaching out to people and showing up to your job. But that's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing a history of community development and community engagement and a promise to be the servant leader that the people of Southwest Florida deserve. So, and not only that, but we're sitting here, 2 strong women candidates. If you haven't heard our podcast, by the way, check it out. You can see it on Apple Podcasts with Dr. Cindy Speaks. Women Fighting for Florida is the title of it. You can hear us kind of talk about what that means in our respective races. But you know, it's great to have us here, and I really wanted to set the vision of what it means, because we can talk about issues, you know, we can talk about the failures of other leaders, but without a vision, people don't know where aspirationally they can be when they invest in your campaign and when they vote for you. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we set aside time to cast that vision. Okay. And that was today about, I hope, you know, of course, we only had an hour and change, not enough time to cast the vision for every single thing, but I hope that you can see where both my heart and Maureen's heart are in terms of serving our community and where we want to continue to push our districts and Florida and the United States. Thanks for joining. Please check me out at cindy4swfl.com. You can email me at vote@cindybanyai.com. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at SWFLMom2020. And you can come and help me fight the QAnon trolls on Twitter if that's what you're into. Love to have you follow along with the conversation. And of course, those volunteers and dollars are always accepted by grassroots candidates like me, because we need you, because we have millions of dollars of Dunkin' Donut bucks going into this race, amongst others. And so we need that. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to those of you who will join us at a later date. Thank you to Maureen and team for joining us here today. And thank you. And as we move forward toward a Southwest and South Florida where the sun shines on everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.